Well, it was about probably 25 years ago, actually, give or take a decade, when Joe came up. He was really enamored of the Hungan, remember?
The voodoo priest.
The voodoo priest. And somehow I acquired a book. I won't tell you how I got it, but I acquired a book about voodoo. And we talked about it, and we let it simmer for several years, and then probably several years later we did a treatment. That's when we were doing we were sending a lot of treatments to Hollywood and stuff, and so we came up with this idea of Uncle Louie. And it was quite a different story than it turned out to be, but basically the same kind of thing where they call somebody back from the other side to help them out. And then when we decided to actually do the film, we were looking for a project to do, and as we usually do, once we sit down together, we just punch it out. I mean, you know, we did a film years ago in like 6 days or 8 days or something like that. And we just sat there. I don't even know how long it took us to write Uncle Louie.
It took us about 2 weeks to finish out the script.
Yeah, but we had it in our head. We knew what was going to happen. We sort of had some of the characters. Then it just evolved.
Well, it's really it's what a wonderful experience it's been working with Joe. We've been working together for over 30 years, and you know, we're very different in a lot of ways, but when we come together, you know, in front of the keyboard, we become one writer, and you know, we have a lot of fun, and the ideas flow. We're real open to each other's ideas, and I told Joe when we were writing Uncle Louie, I said, any idea you have works. Perfect. We're using it, you know, and so that's how it.
We truly just feed off each other. I mean, if we come up with an idea, and we'll put it down there, and if it doesn't fit, we know it eventually. But we never say, "Oh no, that's not going to work." If you know, it just works together. We're always sort of on the same page. It's a lot of fun, actually.
Oh, it really is. We have a lot of fun. It's a blast. And when we first, you know, thought of the idea, we had Danny DeVito in mind for the Uncle Louie part. And you know, we actually it was a much bigger story, a Hollywood story, and the adventure was going to involve a journey to Las Vegas, and you know, a much bigger story. But of course, that didn't work out. And then 20 years later, we ended up. Joe came up one day and said, "We're making the movie," you know, and so that was it. He's usually the impetus behind these things.
Yeah, well, both of us are, because we're like I always. This relationship is kind of like they got two guys in cold blood. You know, like either one by themselves wouldn't have done anything, but together they do something. And I think that's with this kind of stuff. This is what happens. We've been writing together for how many years?
Over 30 years now.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, at least.
In writing Uncle Louie, Joe and I were able to draw from our roots, our family roots. For instance, all of my relatives, my mother and father, came from Buffalo, New York. And when we were writing this, I saw my father, I saw my mother, I saw those wacky friends of his, and they just came to life, and we were able to draw upon that. And Joe, too, with his...
Coming from Bayonne, New Jersey, where the mob, when I was a kid, was all over the place, but we didn't know it was the mob. We called them the boys. You know, I never heard wise guy said, but we knew who was who. And all of that came out. All this Italian-American stuff that we grew up with came out in the film. And we didn't plan it either. We really didn't plan it. We just laughed, and we had a hell of a time putting different characters in that I knew growing up, and Joe witnessed, and our families, and the whole thing.
You know, Joe is great for telling stories about these crazy stories about people he knew in his childhood and his adolescent years. Crazy stories. You know, living in California, you really don't have an idea what goes on back east. And he'd tell these stories, and I told him when we were writing, I said, Joe, this is the time to tell these stories and pull the, you know, no holds barred, you know, just do it. And he did. I mean, some of the craziest stories in Uncle Louie came from his experiences.
I thought everybody's grandmother and aunt took numbers. I didn't know that it was illegal until I was about 36.
You know, Joe and I never produced a film before. We were kind of involved in our first film, Lockdown, a little bit. We really didn't know what it was to be producers, but we learned on the fly, I'll tell you. And one of the things that we did learn right off the bat was we had to make decisions. And we're not great decision makers. We don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. We don't want to step on anybody's toes. We learn you have to make decisions. And, you know, you're losing light, people are wasting time, you know. We had to learn how to make decisions and how to move people and how to move people to urge people on, and that was a real experience.
We had really basically one person on the set that knew what he was doing, that was a professional, that was Nick Dorpino. We probably drove him nuts.
Oh.
But we just kept plugging at it, we made mistakes, we did things wrong, but we learned. Every time we made a mistake, we learned, and I think if we had it to do again, which we will do again, we'll be much more organized and much clearer, and we have a better understanding of what it's like to motivate a crew to do something. And that starts from the director down to carrying the rope or a grip or whatever it is, you know.
Yeah.
So we learned like a lot.
Yeah. And matter of fact, I have to say, without Nick Dorpino, we wouldn't have Uncle Louie. First of all, we wouldn't have Uncle Louie, the star, the character, or we wouldn't have a film. So, you know, Nick Dorpino was, not only was he a magician, but he really saved. One of the things that we added to our script, and I call it a sprinkle of stardust, we added Fidel, the Chihuahua, sweet little guy.
And he works cheaply too.
It's cheap, no, you know, really works cheap. And he doesn't eat much. And then tight lights. Joe's daughter Carrie, she came out with these things, tight lights, where people keep their lighters or chapstick and they can hook it on their belt. So by adding the dog and tight lights, like I said, it sprinkled our script with stardust. It brought it out. It made our transitions more interesting. It made it, it accelerated the plot and gave it a more intrigue.
And I think also, you know, using Fidel, and like Joe said about tight lights, every time we've ever written anything, it's always come from personal experience. I mean, almost everything we write has a lot of truth in it, one way or the other. I mean, we don't just pull things and create things out of the sky. They always have to do with us or people we know or situations we've seen or been in. And I think that's been sprinkled around every script we've ever done.
Yeah. And I think when you're writing a script, you need a little sprinkle of stardust. You need to bring in little things to, you know, to help it move along at a faster pace. Because if we've always said our stories roll really fast, and if people want to know what's going to happen next, and if you don't have that in a film, if you don't build that into a film, you have nothing. People aren't going to watch it. They're not going to read your story. They're not going to watch your film. They want to know what's going to happen next. And Fidel and Tight Lights, it kept that going. They kept that going. They helped the story move, and it was effective.